In times of trauma and adversity, we must create space for connection by sharing a story of hope. Welcome to Humans of Hope, Inspiring Stories, hosted by Kerry Atherton. This podcast shares inspiring stories of individuals who have faced significant challenges and emerged stronger, offering hope and resilience to listeners all over the world. Join Kerry, the founder of Stories of Hope Worldwide, every week to hear these remarkable journeys and find the strength to overcome your adversity. Now, let's listen in to this week's conversation.
Today, I have a remarkable guest, Dave Stewart. Dave is an author. He's worked extensively with the homeless and has his own story of a battle with addiction. But his story is very much a story of hope. Welcome, David. How are you?
I'm well, Kerry. How are you?
So thrilled to be talking to you today. We have a lot in common.
Yes, we do. We sure do.
Yeah.
Good and bad. Well, bad in the past.
Bad turned good.
That's it.
Used to help other people these days. And
very much so.
I've also done a lot of work with the homeless as well, and advantaged and vulnerable in our communities. And I know that's very much part of your story and the heart that you have also.
Thank you. Yes, it is. Yeah. I like to try and give a voice to those who don't have one. Important part of my recovery.
That's great. And you've done a lot of work with the Wayside Chapel.
I have. I've worked with the Wayside Chapel for 3 years. Amazing institution. I left corporate life back in 2013 and been working for non-for-profits for about 8 years now. I'm with the Nature Conservancy now, which we conserve the lands on and water on which we all live and thrive. So it's an amazing place too. So I'm very blessed.
Would you like to do a welcome to country?
Sure. Yeah, I am a proud man of Wiradjuri heritage, and I stand and sit now on Zoom. We sit on Gadigal land of the Eora Nation, and it's also the land on which I raised my 3 sons. So it's a very important part. I've got Aboriginal blood from my mother's side, so it's a big part of who I am.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I loved your book so much.
Oh, thank you.
Do you have a copy there that you can hold up?
I do. That's very fortuitous. Yes, so that's a bit of an expose on my life in active drinking and addiction and then recovery. And I've also written a second book called Pilgrim, which is a novel. So that came out last year in COVID.
Oh, I know. I saw a little bit about that on your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah.
Very interested to know more about that as well. So let's start with your road to recovery. Well, your story of addiction is something that I really want to talk about today.
Sure.
I don't have enough people willing to share about that. And myself being somebody who's on the recovery road of addiction as well, it's something that a lot of people feel ashamed about, something that they want to hide. They're worried about people finding out at work, or what will people think of them. But I'm really grateful to have you be so open and share about that. And my thinking is that the more people that I share my story of recovery with, the more people that can find recovery for themselves.
Oh, definitely. But there's a stigma about it. There's still guys that I grew up with and played sport with and went to university with that, I put my hand up and own my issues. And even though I haven't had a drink since 1998, I'm still treated in certain circles like I'm someone who needs to be handled with kid gloves. So I understand how people are reticent about owning their recovery.
Yeah.
Because there is a stigma about it. But that's a shame, because we need to, by our own stories and our own testimony, I think that's how we liberate people, give people hope, and able to share how we made it through.
Yeah, absolutely. So just start from the beginning if you can. I'd love to hear your story of addiction.
My story can be a little bit different to a lot of others I hear in recovery circles. I come from a loving warm, happy family, and I was a happy kid. I was born in Sydney, out in the western suburbs, and my dad was a politician and a businessman. And as Dad got more successful, we moved from Punchbowl in the heart of the western suburbs to Cronulla. Did you know Sydney that well, Kerry?
But Dave, I grew up in Sydney.
Oh, that's right, you did too.
And my dad was a musician and used to play at Parramatta and at all the western suburbs clubs. He was a musician, so chances are we might have even met down there.
I'm sure we probably did.
Drunk. No, I've been sober for a bit too long now, I think. Anyway.
Wonderful track record. But we moved to Cronulla and then over to Vaucluse. So
I love
it. In the eastern suburbs on the harbour, but I was still a suburban kid with all the rough edges. And now I've got two sisters, and Mum and Dad were very kind, loving folks. But I quickly fell into the glitter and glamour of the eastern suburbs and went to a private school. I didn't pick up drinking till late. I picked it up when I was 17 or 18. But the first time I picked up a beer, I drove my car drunk and got into an altercation with a mate. And I was with a girlfriend at the time who became my wife and the mother of my children. But I was flirting and acting. My behaviour changed straight away. So I was a happy-go-lucky kid, a positive kid, and who set goals. And I got into university, but whenever I drank, my behaviour changed, and I was a binge drinker. So I played cricket. I played grade cricket well into my 20s, and that was an important part of my life. So I learned to binge drink around my training and my university, but it was always a handbrake to my talent and ability. I just fell through university. I ruined a pretty good cricket career with my drinking. I was turning up to games drunk at even 7:38 in the morning as a 18 and a 19-year-old stumbling out of the nut out. Did you ever end up in the Bourbon and Beefsteak in King's Cross?
Yeah.
So I didn't end up there.
The Venus room was where I used to hang out.
Oh, yeah, the Venus room.
Yeah, I didn't dance or anything there. I just drank there, but
Yeah.
Pretty rough places.
Yeah, it was very rough. And I didn't use party drugs at all. So I was one of those guys that I'd be sitting in the pub drinking my schooner or my middy, judging people who use drugs. But I fell into that in my late 20s. So I got married early at 22. Yeah. And I had quite a successful career in business, and we bought a lovely home on the coast at South Coogee and had a very successful career. If you looked at me from the outside, you would have thought everything was fine.
What industry were you working in, Dave?
My father was an electrical engineer. So after I left university, I got an economics degree, and we sold underground power cables all over Australia and Southeast Asia. So it became a very successful business. And, I did a lot of traveling to Japan and Singapore and Malaysia, Taiwan, Bangkok. It was a really lovely career. But always at the back of it was my drinking. I can never, as you would know, Kerry, I could never guarantee my behaviour once I picked up that first drink. But the confusing thing for me was that, I could have a glass of wine or two with my family at a restaurant, or a beer with my wife over a barbecue. But if I was out and given the right conditions with the right people and I could get away with it, my body it exploded and I could have 20, 30 drinks in one sitting. The behaviour became erratic and quite, I'd be getting into fights and ending up at the cross and doing all sorts of things you do at King's Cross. And at 28, I was drunk in a pub in Paddington, a trendy Paddington pub, the Wallara Hotel. And through circumstances, I picked up cocaine. And
wow.
Yeah, and just purely by chance. I'll tell the story. I was going into a cubicle in the toilets to vomit, and some friends of mine who I didn't know used cocaine, was snorting cocaine, and they said, "Here, have this. This will make you feel better." And it just went bang.
Gosh.
Thought, where in God's name has this been all my life? I just changed completely. What it actually did, it enabled me to drink further and stay up longer, and it just exacerbated my whole drinking. What I found out later when I finally got sober was I've got ADHD. So, as we know, stimulants are used as a way of treating attention deficit disorder, and the cocaine actually slowed me down and made me feel normal. It didn't speed me up as it does for most people. So it actually enabled me to be normal, but it gave me a wonderful opportunity to drink further. So over the next 3 or 4 years, I had this double life where I put on my suit, and I was the typical eastern suburbs wanker, excuse the French. I had the BMW and the fancy Italian suits and the Swiss watches and the American shoes and the lovely house. And I had 3 beautiful young boys at that stage, twin boys, and really beautiful wife. And but I had this other part of me, 10% of me, where I just end up at the cross and going into strip joints and all sorts of terrible places. And as you would know, Kerry, you get caught up, and in the end, I had nowhere to go, that I couldn't go home either, because I'd be so off my face and so embarrassed that I'd just be marooned in this.
And addiction causes us to do things that we would never do so.
Oh, never.
And so what you were at that point, what for people that are listening and thinking, maybe do I have a problem or not? You were still functioning, but you're a
Highly functioning,
alcoholic at that stage. Yeah.
Highly functioning. I had the house, and a couple of units on the Gold Coast, and the fancy cars, and superannuation fund, and all that sort of stuff. And but I was breaking up inside, and full of anxiety.
Yeah.
And that stuff still remains with me today. The anxiety that's never gone, and I didn't suffer from it until I actually put the grog down. But I went through three rehabs, and in 1998 I eventually had my last drink. But the 3 years from 1996 to 1998 were just awful. And my wife used to say that living with me, a binge drink, was like living on a roller coaster, tremendous highs and awful lows. And I think binge drinking can be so awful for the people we love the most, because it actually gives people hope when you're sober. But then when you go out, I used to go to these awful benders that I'd roll in at 10, 11, 12 o'clock the next day, and my wife would just be shattered. So, and the marriage, we were married 21 years, that didn't survive recovery. We became like brother and sister, and recovery, it takes everything you've got to get sober. It's really tough in those first few years. And I still had, I really didn't want to, in a strange way, give up my lifestyle. And addiction can go sideways in your behaviour when you get sober too. So it took me a number of years to really settle down. But it ripped my life in two, and I lost virtually everything in those first few years of recovery. So it was, I paid a high price. I didn't know alcohol could do that to you. Because when I was 18, 20, it was everywhere. It was what you did. It was how you became an Australian man. It was your own identity. And I knew I had a problem with alcohol, but I did not know it could rip your life apart like it does. Yeah.
And the classic sign you mentioned too was you had a personality change when you drank.
Oh, huge. And people looking back on it, I was the sort of guy that my mates wanted to go out with when they wanted a big night. Of course, they know that they'd have a good time. And I was the guy that all their partners didn't want to go out with either. But I'd always be left, Kerry, and I'd be the one sneaking into the back bar to have a shot of tequila. And, I didn't want to get out of it. I wanted to get into it. So I wanted to get really high. But I became reckless and dangerous and inconsistent. I was a liar. I was, I became someone that, I hated. When you wake up in the morning, you look in the mirror and you hate the person looking back at you.
Yeah.
I lost all my courage and all my masculinity. I was no good to anyone, let alone myself. And as a father, and now because of recovery, my boys, the twins, are 31 and my young boy's 29, and we've just got an extraordinary relationship. But, I was a good father, but
Yeah.
when I went missing, it took me days and days to recover enough to be, when you're a parent too, to be present, to actually listen to your kids and to be part of their lives. And I just couldn't be that for 50% of the time. When you're recovering from a drunk and you're in a hangover.
I remember those days like they were yesterday. And it's the most shocking feeling that nobody that would understand unless they've been on this journey that we've been on is all the lost time. And
huge.
waking up from a bender, not knowing what we said, what we did, where did that time go, the shame, regret. It's something that you can't even describe what that gut-wrenching feeling is like unless you've lived it.
It's awful. And I was the sort of guy that set goals and I had strong belief in myself. And it's the only thing I've never been able to control, my drinking. So, I was the sort of guy that would set my goals and I'd go for them and I'd achieve them. If I didn't achieve my goal, well, I've done the best I can.
Yeah.
But it completely baffled me. And I had a really sort of public fall from grace. I ruined a lot of friendships and I shattered my wife and her family. You do get over and leave in the past, but they're always with you. And that, as you say, that lost time and huge regrets, and you pay a really heavy price. I look at some younger people coming in today and they into recovery circles and they think, oh, I don't think I've done enough drinking or enough drugging. And I'd say, look, if you're part of us,
don't go that far.
Don't go that far because it's horrific.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's awful. And alcohol in Australia, I'm not one of these people that pushes back on people that drink because alcohol is a wonderful social lubricant. But Australia has...
We'd have one if we could, wouldn't we?
Oh, bloody oath. I'd be having a Chardonnay with you right now.
I know. That's right. I'm like, good on you. Have one for me because I can't have one.
But it's a wonderful social lubricant, but it's the most damaging drug on the planet.
Yeah.
It kills 10 times the amount of heroin addicts and cocaine addicts and ice addicts in Australia a year. And that's the people we know who have died from alcohol. It's a really can be a dirty, rotten, filthy drug, alcohol. And Australia's got an unhealthy relationship with it. Still has.
100%. And I just want to touch on something that you mentioned before, because I have a lot of people come to me and they think that because they're a binge drinker, their family thinks, oh, they only binge drink, they don't drink every day. They actually think, they have a false belief that must mean that they're not an alcoholic. And I say to them, it doesn't matter when you drink, it's about what happens when you drink.
Very much so. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. And binge drinking can be confusing, as I said too. But
yeah,
as you say, it doesn't matter how much you drink, when you drink, how you drink, what you drink, who you drank with. It changes the way you behave, and and you're looking for the next drink between the other drinks, or you're managing your life between the other drinks just to get to the next drink. You've got a problem with alcohol. It's as simple as that. But it's very, very damaging to the nervous system, and it took me many, many years to recover physically from it. And you would have looked at me and thought, because I keep fit, I do a lot of training and boxing and body surfing. I looked fit, but I was a shaking mess inside.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. And it still comes back. I still avoid King's Cross. I go up there and I've worked up there. There's still buildings that I'll walk past in King's Cross and the city and along Oxford Street where I just shudder inside. I've still got, if you're a public drunk and addict and you get out there and you expose yourself, and I've read your story too, Kerry, that as a woman, women are exposed to bad men and men in addiction can target women. And so there's all that mess that goes with that. So there's a lot of shame and guilt and degradation around that sort of behaviour too. So
And I think that because we feel, well, degraded ourselves, either from what's happened to us or what the decisions that we've made, we lose that total sense of value for ourselves. And then
Yeah.
it's like there's no filter then where, well, I felt like I'm damaged goods, and I didn't really know how I was to be treated. So
Yeah.
there's a saying that people treat us how we let people treat us, but because I had no self-worth, I invited that type of treatment into my life, people that didn't place any value on me whatsoever, and they treated me like trash, and I didn't know any different.
Yeah, it's very true. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I had
Yeah.
to be loving parents as well,
Mm.
and more loving.
Mm.
It didn't stop that sense inside of that something's missing and I'm worthless, I'm damaged goods.
Mm.
I hate myself.
Mm.
I used to think every morning when I woke up.
Yeah, that's true. And then you attract people, the energy you put out,
Yeah.
or the lack of self-esteem that you put out. You attract those sort of people, either the same sort of person, and so you're feeding each other negative energy, or you attract the predators too. So, and I've noticed in the recovery when I really work on my the way I approach each morning with a regular routine and structure, that if I'm in a positive mood and I'm putting out that energy and kindness and love, then I attract good people in my life. So, yeah, it's a two-edged sword, as they say.
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
remember when I was 17 or maybe, I don't know, 16 or 17, I'd just broken up with my first boyfriend. Alcohol totally destroyed that relationship. And I remember saying to my mum, I deserve so much better. I'm going to get somebody so much better than that next time. And then I ended up, I think, about 6 to 8 weeks later with the brother of the head of the Gypsy Joker bikie gang. And in my mind, I thought that I had stepped up a level.
That's right.
It's just insanity, isn't it, to what we were thinking,
Oh, that's right.
But even now, when you're talking about the anxiety lives on, I would say that have had a lot of healing, trauma and a lot of recovery and been sober for many, many years.
Mm.
And I stopped when I was 18, when you were just getting going. But even now, I'll lie down for sleep in the middle of the day and I'll have a flashback of somewhere where I woke up drunk or something that happened. And I'm like, where did that come from? And it's something that I haven't thought about for, 30 something years. So it's that stuff that we did when we weren't aware just stays buried in there, doesn't it?
Oh, it does, yeah.
It's managing those emotions and thoughts when they come up. And
Very much so. Yeah, it takes a long time to recover, and some things just remain with us. I think the trauma gets into your DNA and genetics, and I think that's how it's passed on. That's one of my beliefs, that it's passed on from generation to generation. And I'm very conscious of it. It's trying to get as much healing in, not just for myself, but for my 3 boys. And they're all grown men now, so they can see that their fathers come through something, and it's worthwhile, even though it's a hard journey.
yeah,
Mm.
that's great. And
Yeah.
at the height of your addiction, so just before, tell us what brought you to your knees? What was your rock bottom? And how much were you using and consuming when you did hit rock bottom? Because this is a question that I get asked by many
Sure,
people, especially young guys that are addicted to substances and
sure. Look, I had lots of rock bottoms with 3 rehabs. And,
okay.
I had heart attacks and seizures, and, apparently you're not supposed to be able to overdose when you snort cocaine. Well, I overdosed a few times, and I think it's the cocaine, it's the ability to drink so much that becomes so dangerous. But I suppose the change came for me, and I could have 20 up to 40 drinks and 3 bags of Coke and a pack of Sudafed, all in one sitting. So I had I was a pig on it.
Thank
And
God you built up such a high tolerance.
yeah, and I remained really fit. So I think my fitness got me through it. Of course, I'd always recover very quickly too, physically. And I think that's one of the issues with binge drinking and guys who I've seen that in footballers and cricketers and sportsmen and surfers around the eastern suburbs. They have these massive binges and place themselves and their families under huge risk, and then they recover quickly, and it's a con job. My turning point, I was in my third rehab, and it was at Northside Clinic. It was a private clinic.
Northside Clinic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I got sober. I used to go do a lot of meetings at Northside Clinic.
Okay, the Sunday night one, I think was
the Sunday night one, I think it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that place. I have such memories.
It's amazing. And I was in there for the third time, and I vowed the first time that I'd never go back and I'd get sober, but I didn't. And I was sharing a room with 3 other drunks and addicts, 2 heroin addicts and a park drunk, and I thought they had more of a chance than me getting sober. That's how bad I got emotionally and spiritually. And I thought I was too good to be sharing a room. I had this, you have that denial and elitism about yourself. And it was about 3 a.m, and I was awake, and 2 heroin addicts were withdrawing, and they were, their heads were banging against the boards, and there was a park drunk from Newcastle. They're all really lovely guys. He was striking out in his sleep, and I couldn't sleep, and I realised I had to do something about it. My wife wasn't talking to me. She was keeping me away, the sons away from me. I'd ruined, my family was completely shattered. I'd ruined all my friendships. I'd ruined my reputation. And I thought, gee, I better do something about this. And I put my heart and soul into it. And look, it wasn't, I wanted to use for years, basically. And, as I say, my addictions came out sideways in other ways. Now, that was May the 7th, 1998. I haven't had a drink since. And what I did is I cut up my credit cards, and my wage I put into my wife's account, and I was catching buses to meetings. I stopped driving. I made it so hard for myself to be able to get any access to alcohol and drugs that, and I put everything into my recovery. So I was doing meetings every day, and it was part of AA, and the journey began. But for the first few years, Kerry, I was hanging on for dear life. I just didn't know who I was and what I wanted, but I knew I had to get sober. I knew I had to stay sober. I had no faith in my ability to stay sober because I busted so many times.
Yeah.
And no one else had any faith in my ability. Even in AA, God bless some of the members, they thought I was one of those hopeless cases. So,
wow, and you proved them all wrong.
Well, it just, I don't know why, just kept coming back, And that'd be one of the recommendations. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how many times you fall over, no matter how times you get knocked down, get up, get knocked down, get up again, get knocked down, get up again. I kept fighting. And there's an old mentor of mine who's so famous in AA in Sydney called Bede, God bless him, he died. And he had some beautiful sayings. He used to say, if God made you the way you are, then he can accept you as you are, then you should accept you as you are. And are you leading the sort of life you want to lead? And I'd say, no, obviously not. He said, well, if not, why not? Those simple little things. There's another guy, old Steve. Steve used to say, if you were wrong about your alcohol, could mean you were wrong about everything else in your life. And I thought that was the biggest crock of crap I'd ever heard. He was a tough old hombre, but he and I used to clash, but we became really good friends, and we were both supporters of South Sydney Rabbitohs. So that brought us together, and I started listening, and some of the beautiful old women in the fellowship, like Marion, I just really listened, and I didn't share much, and I just sat there and listened, and my hands were shaking so much I'd just sit on my hands, and it was tough.
I had shakes for 6 weeks coming in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember those early days like they were yesterday.
It's funny, and then I'd go to the early meetings at the Rocks at 7 a.m, and I still go to those every so often, and then I drive to work, and I really put a big effort into my kids. And I think my wife and I knew, she's a loving, kind person. We knew, I think, that the damage I'd done was irreparable to the marriage, and that didn't survive after a few years. And the way I dealt with relationships and women, and you learn a lot of. You get exposed to damaged people, and you become a damaged person. So that healing process around my physicality and relationships to women and sexuality, that took years to repair. Years and years.
Yeah.
I really had to work hard at that stuff. And as you said before, Kerry, I had no boundaries. So I didn't know where I ended and where you began. So there was no filter at times. I would be doing stuff or signaling stuff subconsciously, with either leading people on or pushing people away that I was completely unaware of. And took a lot of work and a lot of psychotherapy. And I even did some postgrads in psychotherapy and counselling. And I did that to learn about myself. And but funny enough, that's really helped me in my career now. So it's if I bring my best self into any relationship, and I'm human, so that doesn't happen all the time, but I'm making an effort to do it, then I've got a good chance. So
and that's, and I think what you were saying there is, like, for a long time, because I was on addicted to prescription medication from 11. And I mean, I stopped drinking at 18, but for a long time, anybody on the journey of addiction is used to just finding any masking agent that they can to blot out pain and emotional trauma. And that can look so different, can't it? Like it can be alcohol, drugs, gambling, smoking, food, approval addiction, social media. Like there's just so many different things. And so people out there listening might think, gee, that's a weird saying, but something that's often talked about in the 12-step rooms is when we put one drug down. For instance, a lot of people would stop drinking and then they'd start smoking dope, and they'd get up and say, oh, I'm sober. We call that swapping the witch for the bitch, because it's still a masking agent.
And the whole idea
getting well is learning to do life on life's terms and to manage those emotions. What would you say, Dave? Something I really want to speak to when you were talking about that moment in Northside Clinic when you'd hit rock bottom. You said you'd damaged every relationship in your life, and I know the loneliness of that place, and I was thinking you must have been so lonely. I talk to a lot of people that are going through addictions. They've done things that they're so ashamed of, and they're feeling like, how can I ever come back from that again? Can you just talk to those people at the moment that feel like they're too far gone and the shame's so great?
Yeah.
How do they come back?
Well, you can come back if I can do it. Anyone can. I think sometimes you've got to get to that point, Kerry, where you're in complete despair and abject loss. And I remember just prior to going back into Northside, I went to a controlled drinking program at an addiction clinic at St Vincent's Hospital, and the guy who ran that is still one of the preeminent experts on addiction and alcoholism, and he put me on a controlled drinking program.
Controlled drinking program?
Yeah, and I thought, I didn't say it to him, but I remember sitting there thinking, if I could control my drinking, I wouldn't be. And I remember walking out, and I burst into tears on the street in front of St Vincent's Hospital, Darlinghurst Road. I'm dead, I'm gone. It's this guy who's the expert. And, we put so much faith in our doctors and physicians, and they're extraordinary people. And, with the COVID pandemic, we're so blessed to have such a wonderful health system in Australia compared to many other countries. But if he couldn't help me, I was gone, I was dead. So when I got into Northside Clinic, I think my rock bottom was I actually gave up. I gave up on thinking I could control it, but I knew I still had this faint glimmer of hope in me that I had a life in front of me if I could get on top of it. And I knew I'd seen from all the people around me in active addiction and in recovery circles,
Yeah.
I'd seen people with far worse stories than me who'd lost completely everything. And I still had a great job and a car and 3 beautiful kids and a nice home. But I'd gone through hundreds of thousands of dollars, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'd ripped off my own superannuation fund, which, bloody stupid. That's how stupid you get. So I had this faint glimmer of hope that I could get through if I just hung in there. And I had a tiny belief system in my ability to put one step in front of the other. And I just broke it down into a day. Sometimes I broke it down into a minute. If I got on my bed at night, and the little things come back to you. I started seeing flowers and the ocean and sunrises and
Practicing gratitude.
gratitude and acceptance. And, I really started enjoying this might sound a bit lame, but I started enjoying my breakfast. So I started buying all different sorts of cereals and having a bit of fun and
Yeah.
getting fresh juices and giving myself a treat and buying some really good music. Back in those days, it was still albums and CDs and all that sort of thing. But
Yeah.
I started to try and give myself little treats.
That's the start of learning to love yourself again, isn't it?
It is. And
it doesn't sound weird at all. I remember hearing somebody talk about the excitement of getting their license back and being able to get back in a car after years and being able to get up and get in the shower for the first time in a week. Like, that's stuff you just don't hear about that outside the 12-step stuff that everyone takes for granted. But those things mean the world to people who have had everything stripped away like we have.
Well, I remember reading, and I tried to read and take in other things. I remember reading Viktor Frankl's great book. I can't remember the name of it. And he became one of America's preeminent psychologists. And he was in one of the Nazi death camps. He was a Jewish man. And, he lost family and was broken, completely broken. But he says, they took everything away from me, my family, my pride, my humanity, but the only thing they couldn't take away was my free will. And his free will was a decision to live and to hold that space inside him. Spirituality didn't give that to the Nazis. And I decided not to give that to addiction. And that was my turnaround. But I said, there's a man in there and I'm not going to give it to addiction. And I made a daily decision not to give it away.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's just made me really emotional.
Very powerful.
Yeah, I love that. That's so great. And I think anybody who's going through any kind of a hard time out there, and a lot of the work that I do is with mental health, as you do, to remember that there's a person in there.
Yep.
And a person that is going to be loved and missed if they're gone. And a person that has so many gifts and talents and an opportunity to just make a difference in the world. Even just, telling the stories is going to help change and save so many lives. Everyone's got a story, haven't they?
Everyone's got a backstory, and we've all got a dark side and a light side. And Wayside Chapel, Graham Long and John Owen, who are the really great Australians, CEOs and pastors of Wayside. They teach us to look past the facade of the human being. It's a homeless person who might be aggressive and dirty and wild hair, and they smell their toenails along, and they're drunk or disorderly, and they've got sores on them. You look past that person into their eyes, to the back of their eyes, and you see that daughter or that son back there, and you love them, and that's you give someone hope by your own love and your own care, and you stand in that space with them and show them that you're a human, and you break through the barriers and the gender and the skin color and the demographics and all that judgment. You look at a human being.
I love that.
Yeah.
To be able to connect with people like that on that deep level, it's something that I think, someone else that suffered, it's something that you can only do if you have suffered, is identify with another person that's suffering. But there's a deep level of connection that just doesn't take place.
Yeah, that's right.
Outside of that.
It's very true.
And I think that when we've really suffered, for me in particular, I go straight to the person's heart. I'm not interested in talking about the weather or the exterior of someone, or I'm not impressed by what they've got or what they don't have. It's going straight to the heart of the person and realizing that at the very core of it, this is another human being here.
Yeah, it's very, very important, isn't it? And with my career now, I deal with some very successful and wealthy people, and I'm able to just stand there with them and see the person. I think that comes through. People trust me because I'm not judgmental. And, I get called calm and congruent and trustworthy now. And
That's great.
20-odd years ago, I would, people would call me a rat bag. So it's been a lovely turnaround. But I know it's only a daily. I've got a daily reprieve, and I'm not cured, and I'm not over it, and it's always with me. And the old saying in AA, it's the disease is doing handstands in the cupboard, or push-ups or pull-ups. So I've got to deal with it on a daily basis, and that routine and structure around that's really important for me to stay healthy.
So what do you do to stay healthy mentally and to stay sober these days, Dave?
Yeah, well, it's ironic. It's an ironical thing that things I used to push back on when I was younger, routine and structure. Routine and structure gives me freedom and that light-hearted spirit. So I've got a daily routine. I get up early and I meditate and pray and make myself and my wife a cup. I'm remarried, make myself a cup of coffee, and I exercise. I do a lot of stretching. I try and eat well and drink lots of water. And I have my splurge days where I eat chocolate and chips and all that sort of rubbish. But I do a lot of
You'll
stuff.
need that.
But I think for me, the physical part of my recovery is very important. So I do lots of stretching and get out and do lots of walking. And, the halts are a big part of me: hungry, angry, lonely, tired. So if I'm hungry, I'll eat something. If I'm angry, I'll step away and hold my peace and not reply verbally. If I'm lonely, I'll reach out to someone else, not to someone who I feel they can help me. I'll actually reach out to someone who might need my help, or I'll connect to my sons or my mum and dad or my wife or my sisters, and I'll tell them I love them. If I'm tired, I'll have a sleep. Even on a Saturday and Sunday, I'll have a power nap, and so it's really important, that sort of stuff. Routine's a big part of my life, and it doesn't happen all the time. I'm human, so a lot of days my wife would say I can be a cranky old bugger. So some days I'll wake up with that head, But I really try to reach out to other people and be a difference, make a difference to people in my life.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And that's what I loved about your story. I really picked up that you're such an empathetic person. And just when I picked up your book, I was like, yes, 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 yes. I can identify with everything that he's saying and all the places that you talked about. I'm like, oh my goodness, it's like being back on the journey. And but I just love sitting and talking with another like-minded person who's on the journey of recovery.
Yeah, it's lovely, Karen. I'll take my story out to, so I'll talk to big corporates, and
Yeah.
before the pandemic, I'll be talking to rooms with a couple hundred people in it. And I've done Zooms in pandemics, and I tell my story, and they look at me and think, how could this? I can come across as a little bit squeaky clean these days. And I look at me and think, oh, what you're saying isn't who you are, but it is who I am, and it can come right back. That first drink, I've just got no guarantee on my behaviour. So I'm never cured. I treat it like a disease. It's like someone who maybe suffers from skin cancers. They don't go out in the sun, or they wear a hat and skin cancer. I treat my alcoholism the same way. It's a poison to me. So it'd be like drinking petrol these days.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dave, what would be your message for the world as we wrap up now?
There's a saying I really love. You've got no right to judge another person, even though their behaviour might be something you disapprove of, because none of us are in a position to judge anyone else. Be like me trying to understand or empathise with a woman who's been through a childbirth. I've never done it, so I have no right to have an opinion on it. Don't judge people. Always sit in forgiveness. And we've got, as you said, Kerry, we've all got a backstory. We've all got a light side and a dark side. And there's hope for all of us on this planet. So for the people who are out there who might be struggling or really low in, this COVID and the lockdown, it's been quite traumatic in Sydney. I'm in Sydney and we're in week 6 of the lockdown.
Oh, I know.
It's really bad. There's like drinking, the amount of alcohol sales is up 30-odd%. And we saw a Lifeline this week. It's had the most calls ever.
I saw that too, yes.
Ever. And young kids are presenting an emergency. So, you've got to step back if you can from that madness in the head and just try and take a deep breath and do know that you are loved and that you're a human being that can give something to this world. It's an extraordinary world, but it can also be a dangerous world. But we've always got to look at at the darkness comes the dawn. It's a beautiful way to live your life. The sun will always come up, no matter what.
That 100%, that's right. And that's very much the message of everybody here at Stories of Hope, that there's always light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
If you just hold on and don't give up.
Don't give up. Hold on.
Light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, and the work you do, Kerry's extraordinary. So congratulations.
Oh, thank you, Dave. And, and sincerely, it's been just an absolute honour to have you on today. You're one of my favourite interviews ever.
Oh, thank you, Kerry. It's lovely to see. I can't wait to get up in God's country, Queensland.
Yes, we must catch up then.
Say g'day.
Yeah, that's right. Well, thank you so much, Dave. You are a living, breathing story of hope. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Humans of Hope Inspiring Stories with Kerry Atherton. If this conversation helped you, please consider sharing the podcast with a friend or leave a rating and review on your podcast player. Thank you to Matthew Bliss for podcast production and consultation, and to Kintsugi Heroes for making this podcast possible. If you'd like to find out more about Kerry Atherton, head to storiesofhope.com.au, where you can purchase her books or find out where her next event is taking place. Check the show notes for links and information about our guest in this episode. And remember, you don't have to walk your path alone.